Here in the wild west of Canada, there's scenery in abundance, but very few traffic routes. The Bella Coola Highway is one of the few major roads through British Columbia. It is, in fact, a very special kind of highway. The highway is constantly monitored and maintained to make sure nobody has an accident. Here, you'll find intrepid road workers, four-legged road users, and of course, members of the First Nations who have lived in Canada as long as anyone can remember. In many places, nature still seems untouched, but the highway extends to even the most remote corners of British Columbia. The Hackman Pass is notorious. The locals just call it the Hill. Anyone coming off the road here faces a deadly drop of several hundred meters. In dry weather, the yellow water truck is constantly in operation to prevent driving on the highway becoming even riskier. The water binds the dust for better visibility and gives vehicles better grip. If it weren't for Dean Emsley's truck, the pass would often have to be closed to traffic. Provided, of course, that his truck is in full working order. This morning he was watering the road evenly, but now there's just a trickle coming out of the tank.
Yeah, all morning it worked and then just quit.
The idea is basic. Dean pumps water into the truck's tank and then distributes it on the gravel road.
Well, I'm considered a highways contract worker. My job is to maintain the highway from down by the ocean. When you get to the top of the hill, you go to the chain-off area, and just past that on the left is called the water hole. That's where my jurisdiction is. That's what I look after.
Dean is a one-man team. So first, he bangs a few places and hopes that will get things going again, because the next service garage is nearly 100 kilometers away. Out here, there's no phone reception, just a radio link to Dean's headquarters, and they have no idea what to do.
Could be electrical, it could be anything. I'm not a mechanic, I'm a driver. I don't have a clue what it could be.
So he just has to wait.
You know what, do this job, right? That's all I can say, right? It's just you do your job and you just do it, right? And that's how you do it.
Dean's hope lies in shutting down all the systems and then staying calm. His truck's water tank is at least full, but there's only a trickle coming out. If the defective pump can't spread the water evenly on the road, everything else is just a waste of time.
I just hope when I turn all the power back on, the pump fires right up. That'd be nice. I can continue on with my day. If not, I gotta disconnect everything down there and pull it all up, throw it all in the truck, go to a different project for the rest of the day.
But nothing happens. Dean is fed up and decides to repack the 50-kilo motor, which fills his truck with river water. Leaving it out here is not a good idea, because even on the highway, things get stolen. When Dean's truck is finally running again, he'll be able to drive on into Western Canada. North of Vancouver in British Columbia, where the legendary highway links the little town of Bella Coola with Williams Lake, a distance of almost 500 kilometers. The highway starts in Bella Coola, a small town where the Bella Coola River flows into a Pacific fjord. Bella Coola has around 1,000 inhabitants. Even in the 1950s, the town was still totally isolated. The townsfolk had no road link with the outside world. They were simply on their own. But today, it's virtually the same here as in the rest of Canada. Life is quiet, relaxed, and orderly. Most of the people in Bella Coola belong to an indigenous community called the Nuksak. They have their own culture and their own language. Tsailaks means stop. If they wanted to leave their village today, they could, of course, take the highway. But it's no ordinary road. Avalanches and landslides are common. The cliff walls are soft and constantly changing, so they have to be secured. The road surface is covered with a layer of gravel to prevent vehicles sliding over the edge. Because the substrate is always moving, it's not possible to install guardrails. The state of the road means good business for the service garages on the highway. Every day, people get tire damage and need help. One visitor is stranded at the auto service a few kilometers before the village. He too has suffered a puncture. Dragan Boskovic has repaired thousands of tires at his service garage. This customer just about made it over the Hackman Pass with his flat tire. Travelers often make mistakes. This motorist also let his wheels get dirty. On the dusty highway, that's risky.
So it's really important to sometimes clean the rims because the balance will come off, right?
That's good to know.
New cars are too delicate for the highway. Anyone planning to visit or leave Bella Coola must expect the trip to leave its traces. Tire damage is standard.
It's right here. I can't see what it is yet. Yeah, it's hard to tell. It's really deep in there.
This problem can at least be fixed in the workshop, and the car doesn't need to be towed off the mountain.
We did one about 3 weeks ago, and it was on a hill. So he was parked up the hill. So we had to figure out a way how to bring out that tow truck. The tow truck is like 40 feet long. So we have to kind of figure out a way to be in front of the truck that way we could able to put on the deck. So sometimes it gets a little scary because the view is really high. And when you look down, it's like, oh, dude, I don't want to do this.
Everyone in Bella Coola knows the risks involved in traveling over the pass.
It looks like a rock right there. It looks like a really sharp rock. She's really stuck in there.
And up there, bits of gravel are everywhere.
Wow. Especially when you go up the hill and they put new rockings on there, especially the gravel. And the gravel is so sharp. Like the rocks could be something like, even like this. See how sharp that is? It can protrude right through the tire. So around this part here, sometimes it gets really loud, it will pop.
Not every problem can be fixed so easily. Right behind the service garage is a junkyard. Quite a few of these old cars gave up the ghost on the highway, but at least no one went over the edge in one of them. Having your tire fixed costs the equivalent of 25 euros. That's a bargain. Nervous drivers don't even dare trying to get to Bella Coola. And certainly not at the weekend, because on Saturdays and Sundays the Hackman Pass is left to its own devices. Then nobody waters the highway or removes any large rocks. The maintenance vehicles stay parked in a switchback. As for Dean, well, then he enjoys home comforts in Bella Coola with his dog, his girlfriend, and their family. The highway is their link to the outside world. Without it, Tay Morgan and her dog would never have moved in with Dean.
The highway is a vital line for many, many reasons, and it's very important, and it's very important for us to be able to get out to Williams Lake for certain medical appointments that aren't available in Bella Coola at the small hospital in Bella Coola, which is where I currently work now. It's also how we get our freight. That's how our groceries come in to the grocery store here, and our liquor for the beer store, and lots of the freight for the hardware store here and on that road. So we need that road. It's very important.
Everyone here loves the wild, even if some of its members now adorn the walls.
And then, before you put it in the smoker, you can leave it out in the sun for a few hours so it's not.
Whenever he can, Dean is outdoors. Flowing right behind his house is the 55-kilometer-long Bella Coola River.
This is what I like, man. It's like beautiful, right? You sit back here by the river and you maybe catch a fish or drink a beer, right? And just chill, right? And then you go to work on the hill. And then you gotta have a place to let go. It's your happy spot, right?
Above all, this is somewhere that's totally free, and not only for Dean and his friends. Here, there are no visitors or nosy neighbors. The Bella Coola River is shallow, but there are few rivers in the region with as many fish. When the days get warmer and the holiday period begins in Canada, guests again start arriving in Bella Coola. That immediately makes itself felt on the Hackman Pass over the mountain. It's hardly ever the locals who have problems, it's mainly tourists who are scared of sliding over the edge. Some first need to adapt.
Okay.
This is kind of the worst part. Every other one's really short and windy. But this is like about a 3-kilometer run at a 12% grade. So
I'm just going to be in first gear anyhow.
yeah,
Down.
or 4-wheel drive even. Yeah.
Going downhill isn't any easier when you're carrying half your household in a large caravan. Dimensions in British Columbia are a bit bigger than in Europe. Fortunately, there's Dean, who's back watering the road again. His truck is still defective and can only sprinkle a little water on the highway. But even that's better than having a road full of dust. Dean is never frightened by the highway. Well, hardly ever.
Only time I'm ever afraid of falling down up there is when I gotta water the hill, because we have a rear pump for our water truck. So I gotta lift my box up in the air when I'm going downhill. Pumps in the back and all the water's in the front. It won't pump it out water. And then you come around the corner and every once in a while, whoa, if you got a lot on it kind of feels like your tires are coming off the back, right? That's when I worry, because if I tip over, there's nowhere for me to fall but over the edge.
Sometimes he also gets unexpected visitors up here, like once in winter.
Kind of felt something weird going on behind me. I looked, and a big grizzly bear come out of the creek behind me, and he just come right on the pavement. There was about this much fresh snow, and he walked right towards me, and I jumped in between the freaking axles there, and I just sat there, and I just thought, like, you know, fuck, he's like big bear. Not, I wouldn't call him like record book, but I didn't have a gun, so, you know, he's a big bear, right? And he walked right in front of me, and then he went around in front of my plow truck, in front of my plow, and he went that way, and I see his tracks in the snow, and I'm just sitting there going, fuck, when do I get out of here, man? And then I run for my truck, and I get in my truck, and I sit there and have a cup of tea, and I'm just like, what the fuck just happened, right? You know, like, damn, that scared the shit right out of me, right?
Bears cross the highway in early summer, too. These are cinnamon bears, a subspecies of black bear. The wild in British Columbia is a paradise for bears. You can come across cinnamon bears, black bears, and grizzlies everywhere here. To the delight of bear expert Ellie Lamb, she tries to make people less scared of these predators. The bears find protection and food in the bush around Bella Coola. That's plant food, by the way. Human beings are very rarely on the bear's menu.
Bears do not look at people as food source. I mean, you're going to get anomalies, whether it's with bears or mice or, you know, humans, where it's a different motivation or a different intention, a twist. Something went wrong in the genetic pool, whatever the case.
In an emergency, though, you should stand up to a black bear or a cinnamon bear. But with a grizzly, you should pretend you're dead. That, at least, is what they say. Running away would be pointless. They might look cuddly, but they're faster than the human and far more powerful.
This is bear food. It's called lady fern, and but looking around, you have devil's club, you have sweet cicely, which is a wild carrot. I mean, this whole area is like a huge salad for a bear, you know, especially grizzlies. But black bears eat this as well. How they go about is they don't necessarily want this thick stalk, so they put their mouth down here and they strip it, and you see the stalk left, and then you know that there's been a bear around here.
Here, a female black bear is waiting patiently for her young.
They're all individuals, so you're going to get quite a wide variety of personalities, but their nature, generally, they are very comfortable with others, and that would be other animals, people inclusive of that. They build relationships. They're reciprocal altruistic, and that means they build relationships knowing that they benefit from that, not so different than humans.
After driving over the highway for 3 hours, it's strange to suddenly see a traffic light. It's the only one on the whole route. And even this traffic light is only temporary because of repairs to the highway. It's no longer a gravel road. It has become a broad-surfaced highway. This section belongs to Alexis Creek, one of the few settlements on the almost 500-kilometer-long route. Most of what you see here belongs to a single ranch. The land is part of the C1 Ranch. It lies right next to the highway and on the river. This is farmer David Robertson with his son, and his house with a view.
There's a bear. That's a baby grizzly. Did you want to take a picture of the baby grizzly? He's right there. He's right there.
Yes, this is a bear. Another cinnamon bear. A youngster no more than a year old. But there are grizzlies around here too.
We see grizzlies all the time. 99% don't bother a thing. They're just wandering through eating bugs and grass, right? This farm, C1 Ranch, was owned by some German, if you look it up. A baron owned this for 60, 70 years. And then their family sold it to a guy at Seattle. And then he sold it to a guy at San Francisco. When the multi-millionaires buy stuff, they usually get tired of it after 2 or 3 years. They might last 4 or 5. And then they sell it, go buy a new toy.
Even John Travolta once showed an interest in the farm. He actually landed with his Boeing on the farm's airstrip. But in the end, he decided not to buy.
We run just about 2,000 mother cows here with 5 people. Organized, just organized. Everything's dialed in. Yeah, nobody's sweating too hard.
But they got the same blood, so I think you can make it happen. Yeah.
The C1 has become a family enterprise. David has worked his way up from a truck driver to a land baron. He's assisted by his children and his son-in-law.
Everything's for sale. All the time.
They've lived in Alexis Creek for 5 years now, and they have no plans to leave. At least, not so soon.
They wanted to come here. They wanted to come here and farm. They don't want to be in the city. They'll never move to the city. My son, he'll never move to the city. Like, not a chance.
Sometimes they find calves on the farm which have become detached from their mothers and want to be reunited.
Yeah. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Come on, little dude.
There's not much happening here at the moment, on the left and right of the highway. But that's what Jeremy Verbeck likes.
Secluded, no cell service. It's quite nice. I don't like having the contact all the time. If somebody needs to get a hold of me, they can wait till the evening or something. But for what I do here, there's nothing that beats riding out in the range with a horse and your dog and nobody else around. Somebody needs to get a hold of me to come find me or something, but I don't really ever run into that problem where I have to see somebody or I have to have my cell phone, or I have it all the time because I take pictures. That's all I use it for.
The highway runs right through Alexis Creek, which consists of just a few houses and a small village community. One of its members is Andy Moore. He emigrated to Canada from Germany 30 years ago. He's a machine operator and is now sort of self-sufficient. The The most important job in summer is making firewood for the winter. The logs come from the C1 ranch, because here neighbors help one another. Andy can take whatever he needs. Along the highway, people tend to use less sophisticated methods. Andy's high-tech splitting machine is not exactly standard.
I built it myself. I bought one at the building center once, but it lasted only 3 days. The weld shattered and the hydraulics began to leak. So I said to myself, hey, this is actually your job. I still had the parts from my big crawler unit lying around, like the hydraulic cylinder. And I also had a hydraulic cutter, which can be pressed with a force of around 60 tons. So I got to work.
Andy benefits from the fact that in Canada bark beetles are a serious problem. The insects devastate entire regions. What is left is perfect firewood.
You can only cut wood that's dead. All this wood, for instance, is dead. The bark has virtually all come off. The beetles infested it 10 years ago. And the trees have to go. Now we're allowed to use them for heating. The bark beetle works its way from the bark to the rings, which are supplied with water by the roots. When the beetle bores its way in, they are cut off. The tree can no longer get any water or nutrients and dies from the top down.
Andy also built his house himself, with wood of course, and he also built the heating system. All he bought was the boiler. It is big enough even for the huge logs he burns.
The fire pit heats the water in the boiler to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The water is pumped into the house at 90 or 91 degrees. It's fed into the underfloor heating system and for everyday hot water. This way, I save heating costs of roughly 7,000 or 8,000 a year. Living costs out here are very reasonable. I reckon that our neighbor, for instance, only pays $60 a year in property tax. The only drawback when you live out here is that fire insurance is more expensive. That's because basically the fire brigade only exists on paper. If your place is on fire, deal with it yourself. You're independent. The government leaves you in peace. Our police are pretty cool. They don't give you any grief. They don't turn up and complain that I'm making too much noise working with my machines. That's why we live here. And I reckon that also holds true for all the other folks here.
Alexis Creek is regarded as a center on the highway. But after only a few kilometers, the region already looks more remote. Here, on a side road in through the Nemaya Valley, is where Jimmy Lulula lives. Here, he's training his 2 horses, Easter and Lily. They have to be fit for the long-distance wagon ride to Williams Lake. Jimmy belongs to the Cheney Gwetin, one of the many indigenous communities on the highway. Once a year, they all come together for the big rally. They'll set off in a couple of days. With strong draft horses.
It's about toughening their shoulders up. You can actually ruin a horse. Their shoulders will give out. Your shoulders are one of the most weakest muscles in your body. Horses are similar. You can actually ruin a horse if you don't train them properly. So you have to build up their shoulders, make them tough before the big trip.
The big trip, the convoy of horse-drawn wagons, isn't held just for fun. It takes place in remembrance of the thousands of indigenous children who died in state-run residential schools.
Not much people know that most of our kids were, basically vandalized, and a lot of them didn't make it back. That's still a hidden history that Canada chooses to hide. They're slowly coming around, but you know, they're the last country to buy into UNDRIP.
It's evening in British Columbia, the end of a quiet, windless summer day. Ideal conditions for Dean to go fishing and hang out with his pals on the Bella Coola River.
There's big fish here. Like big spring salmons, like 70-pound spring salmon that come up this river, right?
And on one special day,
it was the day I went down this river from here in my boat, and I caught a 54-pound spring salmon. That was better than any day at work, man.
With Dean, water is at the center of everything.
If you didn't have water up here, where is it? What would we be down there? Dry. Desert. There would be no bears, no eagles, and no fish, right? And no fat belly.
Much as he might like to, Dean can't stay up all night because tomorrow he has to be back at work on the hill. The summer months are getting hotter and drier in British Columbia, and Dean's job is safe. The highway has to be watered. The two mountain goats are hardly bothered by Dean and his truck. They certainly don't suffer from vertigo. The highway crosses the mountains at an altitude of more than 1,500 meters. This weather-beaten inscription commemorates a driver who went over the edge at this spot and was killed. There were no witnesses, so no one knows what actually happened. The further you get from Bella Coola to Williams Lake, the more robust the road becomes. But that doesn't mean that it's really safe. To see cows on the highway is quite normal. But they don't really pay attention to the traffic, and for some that's fatal. In Alexis Creek, the highway has become a totally normal road. But as soon as you turn off, things get a bit bumpy. David, our land baron, is having trouble with his irrigation system. It would take far too long to get an engineer out from the city. So David fixes the problem himself. The field needs to be evenly irrigated with river water, but that's not happening.
If you look at the crop behind me, you can see there's nothing. We're not getting enough water. It's got the same nutrition. It's just not enough water. The nozzles are set wrong. That's why I'm changing out these nozzles. So when we turn this back on for second crop and third crop, is if you don't get enough water in one spot or another, you lose production.
The ranch is privately owned. That tends to be an exception in Canada, where most farms are capital investments, and those who invest have few ties to the land or the animals. But in Alexis Creek, on the banks of the Chilcotin River, the Robertsons have found their paradise. Orlando Robertson's great passion are his bees.
I found the queen. Did you want to see the queen?
She's the bee at the end of his outstretched finger.
On a good hive around here, I can get anywhere from 60 to 120 pounds.
Orlando's bees ensure that plant growth on the farm is more stable, and the honey they produce is sold on the local market.
All we need is some good weather now. We've had rain, so if we get 30 degrees, the honey will start coming in.
But the bears also know that. That's why there is an electric fence around everything. Only a day's ride away, Jimmy is already on the move. The big trip has begun.
So I bring in the tradition back of having team and wagon, but keeping our horse culture alive, and stopped for about 40, 50 years when the road was built. You know, vehicles and stuff more convenient. So a lot of people lost their touch with horsing.
Jimmy has spent the night in a camp with his community. The trip has already been going for a week, and the next long stage lies ahead.
You got people who are uneducated about horses and they think they don't like what they're doing. Just ask yourself, if you were to sit in a jail cell for the rest of your life, would you like to stay in one spot? Or would you like to move around and see different things? Horses are no different from people. They say that, you know, people who are uneducated, green piercers who live in a big city, they say this is hard on horses. They don't know.
Everyone here grew up with horses. Jimmy can't explain how you control a team. You just do it. It's like riding a bike, he reckons. And you don't forget it either. The horses have to be calm and tough, so they won't panic on the highway. Easter and Lily, the two wagon horses, are equally strong and make a good pair.
They have to, it's the same gait, like the same speed. They have to work together in order to turn left, right, back up, go forward. And it's a team, so, you know, one works harder than the other. It's actually really hard on the other one.
For a few years, Jimmy was the chief of the Chenigwetin and still sees himself as a campaigner for his community, which is just one of many indigenous groups in British Columbia.
So there's about 460, give or take, people living here. And not all of them will join, just the more the younger generation. Yeah, and then some of the elders will join in the wagons.
Each wagon is unique, and remember, there are no spare parts.
When we leave the valley, it's a bit harder because there's all the hills and mountains, so we don't go as far the first day. Then after that, we start averaging about 50 kilometers a day. We move camp to camp.
Their destination is the big rodeo in Williams Lake, where they will meet other convoys from neighboring communities. Cattle grids are always a minor problem because they are a barrier for horses too. But unfortunately, there's a passage through the fence which enables the wagons to get round the cattle grids. Because there is less traffic on them, the convoy tries to stay on minor roads for as long as possible. But soon the wagons will have to travel on the highway. As a rule, it's a lot busier. It is now the weekend in Alexis Creek. At one time there was a restaurant and even a hotel here. In Alexis Creek, you'll find rusty-winged starlings and pelicans. Along with people who love the solitude. Here you can quickly set up on your own, like Andy, especially if it involves vehicles.
I wanted to stop fixing cars a long time ago, but then someone bends your ear and says, if you don't take it, it'll end up on the dump. So then you ask, okay, so what's the problem?
These two aren't looking to win a prize for the smartest service garage in British Columbia. They are into making things that are practical. Just like Andy, Anya, his wife, loves engines.
Perfect.
It'll be a while before I get round to the helicopter over there. It needs sandblasting and respraying in the paint booth, Then I'll put it together again, get it back in the air. I'll finish the Harley this winter. It'll be ready next year. But Anja always has new jobs for me. The greenhouse needs fixing, and so on and so forth. So all my minor projects end up on the back burner.
Anja's passion is actually flying.
One day, a light aircraft passed overhead, and I told my husband how great it would be to fly. He immediately took me seriously and made inquiries. After that, I took flying lessons and got my license.
Until their own helicopter is up and running, the two are grounded and have to take the highway. And the highway is important.
Really important.
Out here, it's vital.
To everyone, especially for transporting the sick if they can't be airlifted.
In an emergency, you could take the gravel roads, but then you'd need forever.
Williams Lake is still a day's drive away. Jimmy and his wagons are a familiar sight on the highway.
Well, a lot of people doubted us. They laughed at us and said we're kind of crazy. But still, we're here today, 15 years strong and getting better and bigger every year.
This little bit of road is of symbolic character.
The wagons will symbolize how we got around by transportation back in the day. So the road wasn't actually built. So we've been pretty isolated way out here.
The solitude is over. People along the highway have become more mobile. But that also has its price. Time and again, fresh car wrecks are seen by the roadside, mainly as a result of the driver having lost control. Often it's young people who are killed, and it's not uncommon for alcohol and drugs to be involved. In spring, when the snows melt, the big logging trucks take to the road again. The highway has been a boon for the timber trade. At this time of year, Percy Gitchen can often be seen in the forest. He's the Tsi-Del-Del indigenous community's timber manager and administers their lands.
We're in a typical interior Douglas fir stand. It's fairly mixed. You obviously have some lot younger trees. You've got some, that are sort of in the middle, and then you've also got some older vets. So it's a good mixed stand. But as you can see, it's fairly dense in here, and a lot of dead trees that are down. But it doesn't look too bad. There's a few openings, and so it's this is sort of on the lower risk scale of in relation to wildfire risk.
But that's not the case everywhere. Every summer, forests in Canada catch fire, along the Bella Coola Highway too. Climate change and the bark beetle make it easy for the flames. Dead forest then becomes a case for the shredder. The machine turns even the thickest trees into matchwood. The machine operator can shred an entire hectare of forest in a single day. Percy looks on from a safe distance. The principle is basic. Trees go in, matchwood comes out. Dead trunks were once regarded as worthless and a burden. Now they are raw material for generating electricity.
We're at one of our biomass operation sites, and as you can see, we have a loader that's loading a grinder. So utilizing the slash piles that would normally in the past be burnt, we're increasing utilization here, and we're also reducing the CO2 emissions.
Fully laden, each truck weighs 40 tons, and every few minutes the next one arrives. When the men have finished here, the area will be reforested.
It's very important. First Nations in this area, in Chilcotin, we've really been on the cutting edge of leading forest management on a big scale, and we're proud of that fact. Creating jobs and creating healthy, strong, resilient communities as well, and that's very important, you know, to our nation.
It's only in spring that the machines cannot operate, because when the snow thaws, the roads are too soft for the heavy vehicles. The golden rule is never to go on to the highways unless you have checked the brakes. On the final kilometers, the highway descends once again. After crossing the famous Sheep Creek Bridge, the timber ends up in Williams Lake at the end of the highway. At the power station, the truck is not exactly handled with love and care. In fact, it's on the ramp and into the air as the whole load is tipped out. William Lake marks the end of the Bella Coola Highway. The only town far and wide, Williams Lake looks more like an oversized maze of roads. Most people here are seen sitting in their cars. Williams Lake is the supply center for the surrounding 500 kilometers. People come here to attend to something. Those looking for idyllic surroundings need to go to the other end of the highway. The annual summer rodeo here is legendary. The first animals arrive several days beforehand and are getting ready for the competitions in the Williams Lake Stampede. Some of the horses and cattle have traveled thousands of kilometers. Some have even come from the southern United States or eastern Canada. An hour before the opening ceremony, the arena slowly starts to fill up. People want to see a spectacle, but first they sing the Canadian national anthem. Then it's time for the First Nations to make their big appearance. They drum and dance for greater respect and hope that their culture will at last be better understood. The big moment has arrived, the moment Jimmy has been waiting for days. The entry of the wagons. Many of the participants are brightly dressed in memory of the children who died in state residential schools.
We'll do the grand opening for the orange shirt, or it's Every Child Matters. All the residential schools, all the babies and stuff that were found, we'll be doing a ceremony to open up the Stampede with that, just building awareness.
Everyone is reminded of the shadow across Canada's history.
Gives me pride. I'm just kind of a newcomer and a young guy up and coming, and feeds me in a way like I'm really connected to it.
Then it's the start of what most of the visitors have come to see, the rough and ready part of the Stampede, the first round of the rodeo. The challenge is to stay on the bucking bronco for 8 seconds, and to do so with style. Here at the end of the highway, it's all happening. So many people and so much noise and action. What a contrast to the other end of the highway. The Hackman Pass, where Dean is again watering the road in peace and quiet, watering his Bella Coola Highway.